Good morning, everyone. It's a thrill for me to be here today. I really love the Louisville area, and every time I come back, I see more and more that I like. So I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled that so many of you came out to learn about gardening from us today, too, learn about plants. This is, of course, a particular love of mine. Wouldn't let the cat out of the bag. I am president of Magnolia Society International, so I am slightly biased in terms of magnolias. Really, my goal today is to try to inspire you about the world of magnolias, because there is a lot happening with magnolias right now. It is a plant on the move, thanks to its diversity, thanks to all the people who love it, and thanks to the breeders who are working with it. And in a way, this is a little bit of a teaser. I'm going to talk about all kinds of fantastic plants that are on their way here, but aren't necessarily all that available yet. But still, there are some fantastic magnolias out there now that you really do need to go out and find and seek and plant in your gardens and your towns and your yards, wherever, because it really is a wonderful plant that you can't beat. Now, before I get started here, I've got a question for everyone here. When you heard the word magnolia, what was the first plant that came into your mind? All right? I want you to think about that for a second. What was the first plant that came into your mind when I said magnolia? Was it something like number 1, something like number 2, something like number 3, or something different altogether? So what kind of votes are there for number 1? Okay, that's good. How about number 2? Okay, and how about number 3? Yeah. The further north you go, the more you get numbers 1 and 2. The further south you go, the more you get number 3. And it's, you know, in fact, the further south you go, people don't think there is any other kind of magnolia out there. At least up here, you're aware of all the different types. Though these 3 magnolias, the star magnolia, the saucer magnolia, and the southern magnolia, are definitely the 3 most popular magnolias grown in the United States and in the world as far as that goes. They really are the foundation of what the world knows of when we talk about magnolias. And they are fantastic plants in and of themselves, and they've actually formed the foundation for some tremendous new hybrids that have built upon these 3 species in terms of some of the fantastic things that are available to us now, and even more fantastic things that are going to be available in the future. Already now there are wonderful improvements upon the first 2 in particular here. For example, there's a whole series of star magnolias with colored flowers that are called the Little Girls series. Anne, Jane, Betty, Ricky, Randy, and there's 1 or 2 more whose names escape me right now. And they're wonderful plants, and in northern Florida, Anne flowers 12 weeks out of the year, because not only does it have a burst of flowers in early spring, it continues to throw out sporadic flowers all summer long. So that's a real bonus, and several of the other little girls do something similar as well. Lilliputian is an example of an improved Solangiana, saucer-type magnolia. But they've taken this and done even more complex hybrids, and so we have things like Athenae. Very graceful. Some people say this is the most beautiful flower they've seen. This one was actually bred in New Zealand, and it's an amazing, amazing plant. Did you know there were yellow magnolias? Yes, fantastic yellow magnolias that use our native cucumber tree magnolia, Magnolia acuminata, as the source of the yellow flower color. Amazing variety here. We're still learning which ones are best for which regions of the country. We're still learning how to grow them and use them, I think. But they offer an amazing new flower color for spring for us in the temperate zones anyway. And then there's things like Daybreak, which is actually a color break in the world of magnolias. It may not come across too well in here, but actually, whereas most magnolias have a purple-pink flower color, this is more of a true pink, a soft pink flower color, and was kind of an amazing achievement to occur a number of years ago, and still provide a very large flower. And then I think really some of the the best hybrids out there. I think John is one of the best. It is a beautiful small tree, tremendous flowers. It flowers later than most any other cultivars out there, so that it misses those frosts and freezes, and you don't end up with the damage to the flowers. Tremendous substance to the flowers, great fragrance to the flowers. It's kind of hard to beat. This is one of the ones that our team evaluated across the Southeast a few years ago, and it really came through with flying colors in most places. So I think this is one of the best ones out there. Now, having said that, there's a whole lot of other opportunities out there that are emerging, shall we say, that are going to make even further improvements in the world of magnolias. Now, my title is Magnolias from the Arctic to the Equator, and that is really only a slight exaggeration, all right? In the first place, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru is where some of the new action is taking place in terms of discovering new species of magnolia. And of course, they are definitely, most definitely, on the equator. On the other hand, I mentioned I'm in the Magnolia Society, 45 countries, 600 members worldwide. The country with the third largest number of members is Sweden. Sweden, magnolias are tremendously popular in Sweden, and Sweden is on the Arctic Circle. Now, magnolias aren't legitimately grown in the Arctic Circle, but that's where it's only a slight exaggeration, because certainly Sweden extends to the Arctic Circle. So really, you can see that magnolias are popular and are broadly grown from the equator almost to the Arctic. So I'm only slightly exaggerating. As I said, I am biased. Magnolia Society International is a wonderful organization. We really represent one of the plants that is up and coming. We have 600 members in 45 countries. Our mission is to educate, inform, and inspire people, from gardeners to botanists, to learn more about and conserve and cultivate magnolias. So we really have a noble cause. We're really known mostly for our conservation work in terms of inspiring people in Colombia and so on to conserve their magnolias, but we also do a lot of work to try to promote magnolias worldwide. And at the end, I'll talk about an opportunity for everyone to go to Cuba. So there's even that. So Magnolia Society is a wonderful group. Easy website, magnoliasociety.org. Please go there. We've got a very, very good website that's being improved all the time. So where are magnolias native? Magnolias are native more places than you probably realized. The Asian magnolias are the source of many of our deciduous cultivars that we value so highly, the star magnolia and the saucer-type magnolias. And in Asia, you will find them native from India to Japan, down through Indonesia. Very broad spread from tropical to very cold climates there. The other location that they're found, naturally, are the Americas. There are about 7 native to eastern North America, depending on how you name the species there. And then they have really found tremendous numbers of new species. Well, plants have been there all this time. It's just that we were just discovering them in the past 10 or 20 years in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And this is really where all the new discoveries have been made in recent years. And so that gives you some sense of this disjunct nativity, but they nonetheless provide tremendous area from which we can draw magnolias. Now, anyone want to guess how many species of magnolias there are out there these days? 300. Tom, that's no fair. As you can tell, he's a plant in the audience, literally and figuratively maybe. But that's true. That's very true. That's very true. Although 3 species are widely grown, there are 100 times more species out there that are found in these areas. And it's largely in the last 20 years that probably 100 or more species have been found in the Americas, Central America and South America and so on. If you want to look at the number of species per country out there, China, Mexico, and Colombia are currently considered to have the records in terms of numbers of different species found in those countries. Now, anywhere you go, the magnolias are never really common. but they're always highly valued no matter where you go in the world in terms of being recognized as a beautiful tree and important for ethnobotanical purposes, for traditional purposes and so forth. They're always highly valued. And unfortunately, many of them are threatened. Almost half the species in the world are threatened. And so this is a really good cause for the Magnolia Society to take up to try to conserve these species, bring these into botanical gardens for preservation and so on, and then also provide opportunities for us to use them as resource material for future garden plants. So it really is a valiant goal there that we have. And on the right is the photo of the newest publication, the Red List of Magnoliaceae, which is put out by Botanic Gardens Conservation International. And every 5 to 15 years, they assess a species, in this case Magnolia, to see what the status is in the world, whether it's improving in terms of protecting the species or whether it's further endangered. And this is where that 48% threatened figure comes from. On the other hand, in the world of breeding and cultivars for the gardens, we are experiencing a Magnolia renaissance, according to Tom Rainey in the audience here, literally and figuratively here. And it's because we have all these new species that have been discovered that have been also transferred around the world so that different breeders can work with them. We also have a better understanding of the relationships of the magnolias to each other to discover which ones are easier to cross or to hybridize, to find out which ones are going to thrive in the different climatic zones and so forth. And then we have a very enthused, motivated international cadre of magnoliophiles out there who love working with these plants and are really making great strides in developing some magnificent new magnolias. Going on there, I'm going to try to give you sort of a worldwide preview of some of the activity that's taking place to show you just how dramatic some of these new possibilities are going to become. Going to start in Asia, in China, the mother of gardens, as they like to call it, and one of the countries with some of the most numerous species of magnolia in the world. And they've also had a long civilization to work with magnolias. You think about it, they've had civilization for 5,000 years, and that's a long time to cultivate and domesticate some of these plants out there. And accordingly, there are a lot of activity there in terms of breeders taking place. This is just a small fraction of the number of breeders out there. And again, you have to realize that they have such tremendous species that they have to work with because they're familiar with them over the centuries. They're still found in their forests, and they're still discovering new types in their forests. This is Magnolia springeri. You can see how old this specimen is and how fantastic it is in terms of the flowering, the number of flowers, the size of flowers, the color of flowers. Thanks to their discoveries and sharing some of these discoveries of magnolias, we have some fantastic new evergreens that have been released to the rest of the world, shared with the rest of the world. Magnolia foveolata here in the left, you can see how it almost glows a golden color, and it's because of the tiny little hairs that are present on the leaves, stems, and buds that are anywhere from golden to copper in color that really the new growth just glows when the sun hits it. It's really quite amazing, quite beautiful evergreen species. On the right is Magnolia laevifolia, and it is beloved in the world of breeding because this happens to be a shrub magnolia. So it offers the opportunity to bring the magnolia down to scale, down to size for some of our smaller gardens these days. And it too is an evergreen magnolia with a wonderful 3 to 4 inch white flower in spring. So wonderful opportunities there. These are both present in the US and are being worked with now. New colors, amazing new colors in the world of evergreen magnolias. On the left is variety crassipes, which is a hot pink flowered variety of your basic banana shrub. Those of you who may come from further south or no further south know the banana shrub typically has a creamy yellow flower, whereas the Chinese have discovered these variants with wonderful hot pink flower colors. On the right is Magnolia insignis. This too is an evergreen tree, And it's rather a nondescript evergreen tree, except when it comes into flower. And the flowers can range from white to almost red, like you see here. So again, you can imagine how exciting it is at the prospect of taking some of these red and pink flower colors and breeding them into our other evergreens to come up with a red or pink flowered evergreen that we can use every day. Really very exciting. And again, these are present in the US, and folks are breeding with these plants even as we speak. Now beyond that, the Chinese continue to discover or create new variants of some of the species out there, so that we have some new forms of Magnolias sieboldii there on the left, some new purple-colored forms or red-colored forms of flowers that are normally white, that all of a sudden we have these pink and red types that we can breed with out there. These are not in the US yet, to my knowledge, but they offer the possibilities out there. And in the meantime, the Chinese themselves are taking some of these plants and really doing some amazing things. And this was presented by Dr. Yaling Wang recently at a meeting in terms of an evergreen type of magnolia with tremendous numbers of flowers on a relatively dwarf plant. Really incredible. And if you think this is incredible, take a look at this. Same sort of thing with, again, your pink or hot pink flowers on an evergreen small plant, small tree. So it's really some amazing things that are taking place there in China. It might take some time for some forms like this to get across the Pacific Ocean to us, but it does represent some hope and possibilities out there. Jumping from China down to the tiny little island chain of New Zealand, believe it or not, New Zealand was a hotbed of breeding, particularly a number of years ago, and they're still doing some very exciting work there as well. Mark Jury is most famous as one of the breeders in New Zealand, and they have dipped their toes into the world of evergreens these days, and so you can see how taking some of the Chinese species, how they have been able to develop a blush-colored magnolia with tremendous number of flowers up and down evergreen stems on a very bushy plant. Really quite nice and quite dramatic. But prior to that, they were really known for their deciduous hybrids, Iolanthe, and particularly Vulcan, which represented the first sort of red-colored magnolia for temperate climates. And that was very exciting when it was introduced 15 or 20 years ago. And they've since taken the ball and run with it, so to speak. Vance Hooper has taken germplasm like Vulcan and come up with Genie and Mighty Mouse, where this red flower color or this purplish flower color is really intensified, and really quite dramatic flowers when this plant is in bloom. And a Genie is out there. It's on the market now. I was in Cincinnati at Natorp's Garden Center, and lo and behold, there was a Genie for sale there. Mighty Mouse is again going the trend with a somewhat smaller flower and a somewhat smaller plant that might be more appropriate for some of our courtyard gardens that we have these days. But nonetheless, these really dramatic, deep flower colors are on their way to us. Moving to the tiny little world of Belgium, Europe does not have any native magnolias of their own, so they have to take magnolias from the rest of the world and work with them. And some of the best that I've seen have been taking our native Magnolia acuminata. And this is from the Arboretum Westpilar in Belgium. And they've developed Daphne here, which is a really beautiful yellow flowered colored deciduous magnolia, using our native Magnolia acuminata as a base for this. And they are leveraging this to release a number of other cultivars in the future as well. And then, of course, jumping to the United States. And I'm proud to say that we have a number of very prominent breeders here in the United States that are doing some wonderful work, including Tom Rainey, who's in the audience, so I can't say anything bad about him, at least not right now, and Kevin Paris and Todd West and many others. And this is where I start going by state, and I'm going to start from the north in this case with Todd West, who is breeding magnolias at North Dakota State University. Let me say that again, North Dakota State University. So this is where I'm talking about magnolias for the Arctic, because he literally does have a program where he's breeding for hardiness zones 3B to 4B. And that is quite amazing. And it's not so difficult to breed a magnolia to grow in that climate, but it's difficult to breed a magnolia whose flower buds survive the winter in those climates. And so that's what his challenge is there, to create magnolias with hardy flower buds, with lots of flower buds that do very well. And he is doing some amazing things there. He's had some releases already. He's picking up on the work of the late breeder Dennis Ledvina, who was in Wisconsin doing some similar breeding, and he sort of picked up the reins from Dennis Ledvina's work and is continuing this work. And it's largely this breeding program from Dennis Ledvina and Todd West that is driving all the interest in magnolias in Sweden and other northern climates. So it's really quite fun. Of course, his challenge is to try to get colors in addition to white present in these hardy magnolias, and he's also looking at Magnolia acuminata to try to bring some other flower colors into hardy magnolias for zones 3B and 4B. So from North Carolina, or North Dakota, I'm going to jump to North Carolina, another north, with Dr. Tom Rainey, who's in the audience, so you can feel free to assault him afterwards because he's got some really cool stuff going on there. His goals are to work with fragrance and flower colors and cold hardiness in the Michelia group of plants, and then flower colors, evergreen foliage, and cold hardiness in the Magnolia group of subgenus of magnolias. And it's really amazing what he's got going on. This is his first release from the program. It's a deciduous tree form called Mercury with large purplish pink flowers, as you can see. Great central leader, be perfect as a street tree or a nice stately tree, accent tree in the yard, specimen tree in the yard. And it has great promise for being a new deciduous magnolia for, what, zones 5 to 9 probably, something like that. So it's really a beautiful tree, lots of potential. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. From things that I've seen at Tom's place, from talking to him, it's amazing the evergreens that he's working with, the new species that he's working with, these alternate flower colors and evergreens that he's got going on. This is really just the first of many things to come. And if you ever have an opportunity to hear Tom give a talk about his breeding, take advantage of that, because then you'll really get an excellent preview of what is out there in terms of new breeding for the world of magnolias. Jumping a little bit further north to Virginia, there was an amateur breeder there by the name of Bill Smith, who just recently passed away, but he has been doing some very interesting things, very similar to Tom, one of Tom's programs, in terms of looking at new flower colors and cold hardiness in evergreen types. And this is one of his crosses that just flowered for me this year after having it in the ground for about 5 years. This is a magnolia hybrid of yuyuanensis with insignis. And yuyuanensis provides the narrow evergreen leaves and cold hardiness to zone 7. So that's pretty good, zone 7 for evergreen. And then insignis provides the pink flower color. And it really is a lovely flower on a lovely plant. This is one of the seedlings that I obtained from him, and this is the other one. Slightly different, and I think perhaps even more beautiful, even though it may be a bit less pink. But really some amazing things out there. And again, probably, maybe, hardy zone 7. This is one of the ones that I can maybe share with the group in the future, and we can just determine how cold hardy it is. Jumping down to South Carolina, Kevin Paris is one of Tom Rainey's students, and he is continuing magnolia breeding work there in South Carolina. Again, looking at compact evergreen shrubs or trees with lustrous foliage and multicolored flowers. And he's got some very interesting things that he's been doing there. This is a picture of Kevin demonstrating how to hybridize magnolias. I've got a whole series of slides of this that I didn't have time to include here, but he's very willing to share and teach others how it's done. And this is one of his recent hybrids that just flowered for me. It's, as you can see, it's quite a complex hybrid with 3 different species there. Maudier and labifolia, Maudier for evergreen, labifolia for shrub size, and then crassipes for the pink flower color. And we get a lovely little pink flower there. But this is only probably the early series of releases from him because he's got an amazing plant that he is looking at releasing in the future, and that is it there. Can you see? Do you see the size of flowers? Do you see the pinkness of the flowers? Do you see the evergreen foliage? This is something that's quite amazing that he's in the process of trying to protect and release and get it out to the market in the next few years anyway. So this is something that really is going to be available to us in the very near future, and really shows how magnolias have opportunities for us out there. So, of course, when it comes to all this talk, I'm being very mean because I'm showing you these things and you can't get them anywhere, right? Well, it's not entirely true. Some of the improved hybrids and the yellow-flowered hybrids you can find at your better garden centers for sure, because more and more people are learning about these and more people are asking for these, so they are in turn asking wholesale growers to grow them for them. In terms of some of the other things I talked about, internet mail order and specialty nurseries are where you can find some of the new species from China, Magnolia foveolata, Magnolia labifolia, some of those, and some of the new hybrids that we are seeing on the market, coming on the market. Unfortunately, some of these dramatic, fantastic new ones are a little bit further away from us in terms of being able to get our hands on them. I did want to show you one other one that is on the market that right now that you can get out there and buy. It's called Magnolia KDO Early, and it was developed in the Atlanta area. It is on the market. It's a hybrid of that insignis. We had the pink or red flowers with our native Magnolia virginiana, the sweet bay magnolia. It's a very beautiful flower, very lotus-like beautiful flower. I do have to tell you that the plant is not the prettiest in the world, but that's usually the way this works. The first introductions we buy for the beautiful flowers or whatever, and then later introductions improve the form and appearance of the plant itself. But nonetheless, this is one that is out there that you can go out there and look for and buy right now. So, hardiness of that. It was bred in Atlanta, so that's got to be, what, 7B? And so I would suspect zone 7 anyway. I'm not sure how much more than that. And anybody else know? Anybody else worked with it? 7A? Richmond? Okay, good, good. So I just wanted to again remind you that Magnolia Society is a tremendous resource to learn about magnolias, and especially some of these new magnolias coming out. I have in the back of the room some membership brochures in case anybody's interested, or magnoliasociety.org is the website that you can go to. In terms of where you can go to see magnolias, again, the Magnolia Society website has a page that can take you and show you throughout the country and throughout the world places that have particularly good collections of magnolias. In addition, there are a series of gardens that are considered to have the national collection of magnolias in North America. And there are currently 17 sites, I think, where you can see part of the national collection of magnolia all the way from north to Florida, to my location in Florida. So that's another place to see magnolia. The Magnolia Society website also has a page where you can look at the nurseries, mail order and internet nurseries that might be able to provide some of the plants that you're looking for. And then finally, they have an excellent journal, and this is where you really learn about all the new hybrids and species and so on, all the up-and-coming magnolias. It gives you a really good glimpse at what's coming down the pike. And then many times at our meetings, we will have a silent auction where you can actually be the first to bid on and buy some of the new introductions out there. And our meeting was in Philadelphia this last April. Next year, our meeting is in Sweden. I told you. The Swedes love our magnolias. And then after that, the meeting is going to be, I believe, in Vancouver. So great opportunities to travel and learn about magnolias. And last but not least, Magnolia Society is heading to Cuba this year for a Magnolia Symposium there in collaboration with some of the Cuban Society of Botany and some of the other groups. And anyone and everyone can join us in Cuba. It's not cheap, but then it's not cheap for anyone to travel to Cuba right now. So I do invite you to look at this. Again, I've got flyers in the back of the room if you're interested in joining us in Cuba. It's basically a 5-day excursion there. I wouldn't call it an excursion. There's a 5 days there, which there's a symposium with meetings, and then about a day and a half of field trips to the Havana Botanical Garden, to Old Havana, which has all the colonial architecture, as well as to a natural area with native wild magnolias there that you can see. So it really is an opportunity to learn about magnolias and experience Cuba, the flora, fauna, and culture of Cuba all at the same time. So thank you very much for your patience today. I hope I've shown you how magnolias really are becoming adapted from the Arctic to the equator, that there's a magnolia out there for you, I'm sure of it, at least one. And so I hope that you've been a bit inspired to go out and seek some of these out and buy one for your own garden. Thank you very much.